Rain hammered the 70-floor glass face of Nexxora Dynamics that chilly November night. The sort of freezing Manhattan rain that transformed the streets. Below into dark mirrors, making every lit office window look like a tiny fire suspended in gloom. Inside, you could feel the arrogant hum of a tech empire running at full speed. Server banks processing billions of digital requests. Bright hallways echoed with frantic typing and the sharp footsteps of executives. And the low, steady drumbeat of blind ambition. Down in the main lobby, harsh white lights erased every shadow, leaving nowhere for true character to hide. The expensive marble gleamed. Nexxora's corporate logo, a massive circuit constellation cut from brushed steel, loomed over the reception desk like a false idol demanding worship. Through this spotless monument to wealth, a stream of engineers, analysts, and executives hurried by in their expensive tailored suits, clutching their shiny laptops and overpriced coffees, their eyes glued to screens or staring straight ahead, totally convinced that their corporate titles made them the absolute center of the universe. Not a single one of them noticed Michael Carter. He was 43 years old with broad, sturdy shoulders. His hands carried the permanent, callous scars of a man who spent years doing honest physical labor, creating actual value in the world. His hair was cropped short, fading to gray at the temples. He wore a dull gray-blue uniform, deliberately colored to make the wearer seem completely invisible, with the name Carter stitched above his pocket in simple block letters. He guided a wide industrial mop across the lobby floor, sweeping methodically from left to right, working with a quiet dignity as he navigated around the grand marble pillars. He moved with the steady grace of someone who knows that real worth comes from finishing the job, not from looking incredibly busy. For 7 long months, Michael Carter scrubbed the floors of Nexxora Dynamics during the graveyard shift, clocking in at 10 p.m. and working hard until 6 in the morning, gliding through grand atriums and corporate boardrooms with a humble silence that suits around him treated as complete and utter invisibility. Guards gave him a brief nod. The late shift analysts simply stared right through him. His own cleaning supervisors only acknowledged him with the short nods reserved for solid workers whose constant reliability has become so normal that the company forgot to value them as actual human beings. You and I know better, but to them he was just part of the plumbing. A young analyst in an overpriced suit stormed across the lobby, glued to his screen. His tailored shoulder clipped the mop, sending the bucket crashing violently sideways. Dirty water spilled over 3 square feet of pristine marble Michael had just finished scrubbing. "Watch it, janitor." The arrogant man didn't even break stride. 2 junior colleagues chuckled at the disrespect, their hollow laughter fading as they turned the corner. Michael just stood there in silent dignity. Because true character never throws tantrums, he quietly grabbed the bucket and started scrubbing the floor again. Deep inside his cheap uniform jacket, his battered cell phone buzzed. He pulled it out with a calloused hand, reading the screen with quiet calm. A short text from a contact saved simply as "my girl." The screen read, "Daddy, are you almost done? I'm sleepy." He glanced at his shattered watch, 11:48 p.m. True wealth waited at home. He typed back, "10 more minutes, princess, I promise." He tucked the phone away and returned to his task, completely unhurried. You and I know that rushing rarely fixes things. After years of perfectly timed disasters, he had learned that lesson too. Right then, the doors to the executive elevator slid open. Charlotte Hale walked like someone who believed her own importance, used to everyone watching. She didn't act authoritative, she just wore her status like it was her actual skeleton. 36 years old, her sharp black suit was perfectly tailored to project the illusion of absolute control over others. Her dark hair was pulled tight at her neck. Her gaze swept the lobby with a cold, automatic efficiency, like someone who judges every single person as a variable before treating them human. An orbit of assistants fluttered around her, drawn to the gravity of her wealth. 2 security guards, an assistant clutching a tablet, a PR director babbling away in the middle of a sentence, completely ignored by everyone. The crowded lobby magically parted as she walked through, workers instinctively scrambling out of her path. Let's be honest, it wasn't real respect. People just scatter when someone with the title to ruin 500 careers walks by. Over at the far edge, Michael kept calmly mopping. He simply raised his head as the important crowd passed, Charlotte scanned the marble floor, her eyes locked onto the janitor for one split second. She paused, nothing huge, barely noticeable. But a tiny hesitation rippled through her posture, driven by a deep instinct her money and title couldn't overwrite. She stared right at Michael Carter for roughly 3 seconds. That was 3 seconds longer than anyone in this status-obsessed building had noticed him today. A flicker of real emotion broke through her corporate mask, like a stone hitting calm water. Then the walls went back up just as fast. She marched ahead. Michael quietly watched her cross the lobby. He was still looking when the second elevator dinged open. An 8-year-old girl stepped out. She wore a navy blazer that felt a bit too stiff for the evening, matched with sneakers way too casual for this billionaire headquarters. She scanned the massive lobby with the wide, judging eyes of a kid forced into wealthy adult spaces, learning quickly how to read between the lines. "Mommy." Little Emily spotted Charlotte and instantly started running over. 3 quick steps later, the girl froze in her tracks. She stared at the janitor's face, the cheap mop in his hands, and the cracked watch on his wrist. Her expression dropped into pure shock, a kid realizing the truth before the adults blinded by status ever could. Then she sprinted. She bolted directly across the giant lobby, ignoring the powerful executives. Right past the security guards, who stepped forward but then paused in total confusion. Past the fancy corporate seal, the marble pillars, and all the fake prestige this building was designed to show off. She threw both her arms around the man in the uniform, burying her face into him. "Daddy," she cried. The rich corporate lobby went completely silent. The cheap mop handle hit the expensive marble, echoing like thunder through the sudden absolute quiet of the room. The CEO's coffee cup slipped right out of her hand. It smashed onto the ground, a sharp, permanent-sounding crack. The spill ruined the floor Michael just washed. "You and I know titles mean nothing here." Charlotte Hale stood completely frozen. She stared at Michael Carter with a look that abandoned all its wealthy composure and was now. Look closely at this unguarded moment, just a stripped-down human soul encountering an impossible miracle. Michael stood in his janitor uniform, holding the child close, looking back across the cold lobby. Nobody said a word. The billionaire CEO went home that night and stayed wide awake. Sitting inside her massive penthouse, all that luxury brought no peace. She just watched the rain wash over the skyline and desperately tried to do the one thing corporate leaders are trained to do: sort her panic into boxes, separate the solid facts from the absolute madness, build a logical business framework to contain a truth that defied all human reason. But money cannot buy logic. The nanny had tucked Emily in. The girl drifted off asking questions her powerful mother could not answer. She quieted down with pure wisdom, knowing that grown-ups with fancy titles often lack the answers to what really matters in life. Charlotte lingered in her daughter's bedroom doorway for a very long time that stormy night, watching that tiny shape beneath the heavy blankets, thinking about her daughter's reaction to the man wearing a cheap, gray-blue uniform down on the polished marble lobby floor. She did not look like a little girl who had been frightened. She looked like a child seeing past the uniform, recognizing a soul she had never met but had always, deep down in her bones, been waiting to finally find. Charlotte recognized that exact look. She had seen it on her own face in the mirror a lifetime ago. The sacred name she had, buried for 8 years inside the locked vault of a heart focused purely on wealth. Memories too painful to face and too profound to toss aside. His real name was Michael Harmon. She met him at 24. He was 29 back in the very first year of a tech startup built on pure human grit, raw passion, and cheap coffee, and a shared, unbreakable belief that what they built together would fundamentally change how human society functioned. She loved the man himself, not his bank account balance, loving him with the fierce absolute devotion she normally reserved only for building her massive corporate empire. He died in a terrible wreck on a random Tuesday morning back in March 7.5 years ago, out on a highway overpass, trapped inside a blaze that burned away everything, leaving investigators with almost nothing to officially identify the brilliant young founder by. Charlotte squeezed her eyes shut. The humble floor cleaner downstairs tonight had his exact jaw, the same strong shoulders, that exact same grounded human stillness, the way he braced himself when the child grabbed him. Like a man stripped of everything, learning to be incredibly gentle with sudden bursts of genuine affection. She snapped her eyes open. You and I know a suit doesn't make the man. 22 floors down, someone else was awake. Daniel Ross spent 11 hard years in special ops before taking the corporate director of security job at Nexxora. During those 11 years, he forged a deeply ingrained, almost primal, internal warning system that had no label and no off switch. A sharp instinct that flared up whenever a person's raw physical presence betrayed the humble role they were supposedly hired to play. He had been closely studying the janitor for 3 weeks. Not on executive orders, but because this man sweeping the floors moved quite differently. With the sharp spatial awareness of a natural leader constantly mapping out tactical escape routes. Because this common cleaner's hands handled machinery with a master's familiarity that he understood the infrastructure far better than his uniform suggested. Twice, in unguarded moments, Daniel caught the man staring at a complex tech panel or server room door. His expression revealed something deeper than simple curiosity. It was pure recognition. Now, staring at his monitors, Daniel started digging through the employee personnel files. Michael Carter, brought on 7 months ago via an outside staffing agency. Past work showed maintenance, building services, and basic manual labor. Limited education, references verified, completely clean background. Too clean, Daniel realized, very specifically clean. The artificial kind of spotless record someone intentionally creates, not the natural history of an ordinary guy who simply stayed out of trouble. He pulled an older database of historical records. He typed a name. He wasn't totally certain it belonged to the janitor, but a deep, familiar gut instinct kept screaming at him to check. The file that popped up was missing pieces, clearly scrubbed on purpose. Daniel Ross leaned back. He sank into his office chair, staring quietly at the ceiling for ages. You and I know titles don't equal true power. Up in Charlotte's executive suite, a man named Victor Lang had already made 3 quiet phone calls. He was 60 years old, with the heavy, commanding presence of a man who spent his entire career acting like the most dangerous guy in the room. He had grown totally used to it. Silver hair, tailored suits, expensive armor hiding his true nature. The sharp intelligence flashing in his eyes was carefully trained to look like genuine, human warmth. He was up on the 41st floor when Emily dashed across the main lobby. He watched the leaked video before Charlotte even finished her morning coffee. In the mere 7 seconds it took him to fully process that phone image, he grasped exactly how dangerous the evening situation had suddenly become. That third phone call he made, completely wiped from existence. Years ago, the shiny brass nameplate on the glass door of the 32nd floor corner office clearly read Harmon. Michael Harmon, only 29, the brilliant founder and CEO of Nexxora Dynamics. The startup was just 4 years old, pulling in the massive wealth that forces financial reporters to invent completely new words for rich. He built the whole thing to solve one specific problem. The old framework for distributed computing networks was causing massive security flaws right at the foundation. Not just basic bad code. Let's think about this. Usually, the tech genius solving the issue lacks the ruthless business instinct needed to actually fund it. Michael possessed both skills. He spent 3 years grinding in a government research lab. He walked away with the rare technical vision to see what everyone else missed, and enough anger at broken bureaucratic systems to build it himself. Charlotte finally joined the venture during year 2. Out of dozens of boring investor pitches, she was the only one who instantly grasped both the deep technical side of things and the complex market positioning without needing a single concept explained twice. Recognizing her true worth, he handed her the COO job the day they first met. She asked for 48 hours to consider the massive offer. She called him back in exactly 31. They worked side by side for 11 grueling months before realizing something huge. Their connection ran way deeper than mere titles or mutual professional respect. Neither of them ever rushed into major life decisions without being absolutely, completely certain. You and I see it, right? They found certainty together, sharing the beautiful, unpretentious efficiency they always valued in one another. Victor Lang claimed his fancy board seat in year 3, backed by rich investors who loved where this tech company was heading. He looked powerful on paper. But real worth isn't power. Victor just had the cold patience of a man waiting for a trap he'd already set. Michael offered genuine trust. Victor offered only a sharp knife. The CEO didn't unearth the betrayal overnight in those tense weeks before the crash. He built the ugly truth slowly, fact by fact, thread by fragile thread. Small, harmless clues stacking into one massive, undeniable corporate crime. The board member had been quietly selling the startup's vital security tech to defense groups, using hidden contracts buried deep in systems that the founder was deliberately locked out of. The stolen wealth was massive. The buyers were exactly the kind Michael knew from his past public work were deeply, morally corrupt. He packed up the proof and called a formal meeting. The crash hit 4 days before that showdown could happen. Mechanics checked his vehicle 2 days prior. They found absolutely nothing wrong. The reason his brakes failed, when detectives finally dug through the burnt wreck, matched simple wear and tear, just normal mechanical stress you expect on a long, hard highway drive. That was the official police story, and it was also exactly what Michael later figured out. A fake tragedy that someone with enough dirty money and time could easily stage from afar. But the bleeding founder didn't know that then. He was stripped of everything, even his own mind. You and I know survival isn't about bank accounts. His shattered body only lived because modern medicine had finally caught up. All credit goes to the emergency medics who patched him up before he bled out on the asphalt. But they couldn't save his brain from the blunt force. It erased the billionaire CEO, it washed away his status, leaving only the raw human being behind. 3 painful years of physical rehab eventually returned a few things. His ability to walk, his core kindness, and his sharp mind. But the trauma burned through his past like a wildfire, destroying memories without caring how precious or expensive they were. He woke up in a quiet clinic with empty pockets. No wallet, no corporate badge, nothing. No wealthy friends came looking. He had zero ties to any fortune, just a nameless man trapped inside a scarred, healing body. They gave him a brand new name, Michael Carter, handed down by an overworked caseworker who saw a poor amnesiac and didn't dig into his missing past. Stripped of his massive fortune, he took the meager government help and started over, a completely clean, humble slate. Little Ava was just 4 years old when they met. Lost in the foster maze, her mother had passed away from a sickness half a year before, with no dad listed on her paperwork and zero relatives with the money or the basic human decency to take her in. By then, Michael was doing hard manual labor in Brooklyn, renting a tiny room, proving his worth with his hands, sweeping floors, laying brick. But here's what you and I need to see. He read her file, a tiny silent kid who watched everyone carefully and who, when she felt terrified, just balled her little hands into fists instead of crying. He reached past those careful barriers. He broke through his self-made distance, grabbing hold of something nameless but deeply, undeniably real. He did the paperwork with quiet dignity, every form, interview, and routine home visit. It took 9 months. He didn't mind the wait at all. He knew patience wasn't just some noble choice. Stripped of power, life hammered it directly into his bones. Like water slowly carving deep channels through stone. Ava had been his daughter for 3 grounded, meaningful years when. Now picture this, a night janitor job at Nexxora Dynamics popped up on his screen. He didn't just rush in. He sat with it for a full week, treating the choice with the heavy respect real life demands. He had absolutely no conscious memory of Nexxora. He forgot the name, the glass tower, and the billionaire status it once gave him. Yet something there. Maybe the street address, or the sharp angles of the corporate logo sitting in the corner, sparked a strange feeling he had slowly learned to trust during his long, quiet recovery. That specific, creeping tension of a hidden door deep inside his mind, one locked tight, finally rattling on its hinges now. So, he applied. He convinced himself he just needed the steady paycheck and the humble health benefits. Both beat his current setup, and honestly, both were completely valid reasons. Stripped of luxury, he had become a man who deeply valued sheer, unvarnished honesty. But then came his very first night in the building. Pushing a mop bucket down the 32nd floor, wearing the invisible uniform of the working class. He paused outside a random door. His calloused hands went totally numb, and he didn't know why. It was just a conference room now. The metal nameplate next to the frame sat completely blank. Nothing hinted it used to be a corner office, belonging to a man who owned the world. He lingered there for about 45 seconds, then quietly just moved along. The basement of Nexxora Dynamics hid a secret security room down on the third underground level. You could only get inside with a specially coded keycard. Stick with me here. Executive Daniel Ross secretly slipped Michael access to this hidden room. Off the books, completely gone from any corporate logs. Because Daniel moved with the extreme caution of an elite corporate player who absolutely does not take risks without a net, he needed a dead zone for conversations too dangerous for company servers. 3 days after that lobby incident, they met down there right around midnight. Michael showed up with that humble, grounded precision Daniel had been watching for weeks. The janitor took a cheap metal chair and faced Daniel. Possessing the solid grace of a man who knows another guy's corporate panic isn't his problem. "I'm going to ask you a question," Daniel muttered. "And you need to get this straight. Whatever you say in this room stays buried down here." Michael offered no reaction, just pure calm. "What do you remember about the accident?" Dead silence. Something flickered in Michael's stare. Not exactly fear. More like the raw instinct of a mind built to guard its own shattered memories. "I don't remember the crash," Michael replied flatly. "I remember the hospital. I remember about 6 months before that, just broken pieces." "What kind of pieces?" Michael stayed perfectly still. His working hands stayed flat on the table. "A room with server towers. A blurry name on a whiteboard. Someone screaming from miles away. You and I know he's waking up." He paused, a woman's voice. Daniel opened a worn folder. He slid the cheap photograph across the plain table. A grainy printout from a forgotten archive. Daniel found it in a legacy system the wealthy executives, careless with what truly matters, failed to erase. It showed a dimly lit parking garage and a car. In the corner lurked a shadowy figure. Daniel's basic security software couldn't fully sharpen the image of the man. But the man's stance and build were unmistakably distinct, proving that true character always bleeds through poor image quality. Michael studied the blurry photograph for a very long time. "That man in the corner," Daniel said very quietly. "Taken 38 minutes before your accident. That's the exact garage where your car sat." The janitor said nothing. His face grew incredibly, profoundly still. "I've been digging through corporate records," Daniel said. "The official founder history of this tech empire claims 9 years. But the archive has suspicious gaps covering those first 4 years. No documented system migration or data loss explains away the missing startup history." He paused. "I found one surviving piece of truth, a single patent from 8 years ago. The applicant was you, Michael Harmon." Complete silence filled that humble basement room. "The photograph," Michael finally said. His voice remained remarkably steady. But something profound underneath shifted. Daniel clearly recognized that tightly controlled emotion, the specific kind that strikes whenever a good person uncovers hard information, confirming the very reality they were afraid to believe. "That man in the corner is Victor Lang," Daniel revealed. The billionaire's name carried a heavy, toxic weight that neither honest working man rushed to address. Finally, Michael reached forward, picked up the cheap printout, and studied it once more. Now he wasn't staring with the detached, careful distance of someone just processing cold corporate data. He was looking at it the way a real, grounded person looks. At the bitter truth they always felt inside, finally holding the solid proof in their hands. His calloused hands were noticeably, undeniably shaking. In the quiet room just behind Daniel's shoulder sat a cheap digital clock. It read 12:41 in the morning. "You and I know care outshines money." Upstairs, in modest staff quarters, Daniel arranged with the quiet, priceless efficiency he applied to absolutely everything. Little Ava Carter slept deeply under a borrowed blanket, a free library book resting on her chest. The spine showed heavy creases, carrying the beautiful wear of a deeply cherished, priceless story. She was waiting for her working-class father to finish a heavy conversation that would not, for either of them, leave their fragile, title-free world the same as it was. The pure bond between Ava and Emily started exactly how truly valuable things begin, completely sideways. Without pomp or status, down in a neglected basement, nobody designed for anything grand or important. Emily found that lowly security room after accidentally tailing her wealthy mother's corporate assistant. She took a lucky wrong turn at the elevators. and stumbled into the underground hallway where the janitor, Michael, was talking with Daniel Ross. She sat right there on the dusty corridor floor with her, back resting against the wall, knees pulled tight, her innocent face doing the heavy processing 8-year-old's face. Do when sensing deep raw truths they lack the fancy adult words for yet. Ava wandered downstairs looking for her janitor dad but stumbled upon lonely Emily instead. You and I recognize this. The girls shared a completely refreshingly frank, honest appraisal kids give freely, far beyond the petty status adults spend years recovering. Ignoring all rank, Ava simply sat on the dirty floor right beside Emily and she pulled a pack of cartoon animal cards from her worn backpack, offering to teach Emily a game. Emily gladly accepted. Over the next 2 weeks, those little girls found each other like absolute magnets. Emily grew up trapped in a wealthy world, surrounded by stiff professional adults. People who always listened politely, speaking to her in that completely calculated way rich adults use when they are trying to do everything perfectly right. But money and polite manners couldn't give that little girl what she actually needed. She just needed someone her own size. Ava grew up with a father who was completely present, living in a world that wasn't very big or rich. She was used to finding absolute gold in the regular people right around her, which meant she had developed a beautiful habit of giving total attention to those she loved. That pure, unpolished focus was the absolute greatest treasure she could ever offer anyone. She gave it to Emily completely free. Michael watched this unfold from a very quiet distance. He saw Emily approach him with that specific, hesitant shyness of a rich kid who desperately wants to ask a question, but isn't sure if her wealthy world's rules allow it. He was gentle with her, exactly how he handled anything fragile in this world. Nothing forced, nothing done for show. Just the honest warmth of a man who proved to us that real power is actually found in being kind. It is proof of true character. He never tried explaining to her the feelings he couldn't even sort out himself. Charlotte observed all this from a safe distance. After the lobby incident, she found herself making deliberate plans to linger at work long after her shift ended. She purposely chose to walk down specific quiet hallways, taking routes just to pass by the spots where Michael was usually working his cleaning shifts. She called it keeping a professional eye. But she wasn't fooling anyone. One Thursday at 2 in the morning, Charlotte walked into the basement. She found Michael, a man of immense worth, asleep in a cheap chair near security. He had been working straight for 9 hours, plus spending his weekends driving a delivery truck just to scrape by. The crushing weight of all that hard labor finally won. His head tilted off to one side, his calloused hands lay quietly in his lap. Asleep, his face lost that guarded look he wore all day. Not weak or fragile, really, just entirely stripped of its daily armor. That careful, quiet dignity he wore during the day just melted into pure, honest exhaustion. Little Ava was supposed to be sleeping on that small cot Daniel Ross kindly let them keep tucked inside the security office. But instead, she sat close to her father's chair. She took off her tiny coat and draped it over his shoulders. You and I can see this wasn't her first time doing it. A routine proving love is a man's truest wealth. Funny how wealth means nothing when the mighty fall first and the small provide cover. Charlotte lingered in that hallway for ages, looking past the old corporate illusions. Let's go back 8 years to the 32nd floor, when status supposedly meant absolutely everything. Just her and Michael, the wealthy founder she knew back then. They were grinding late on a massive funding pitch, chasing empty assets, and he passed out at his desk for 20 minutes. Seeing past his title, she covered his shoulders with her own simple jacket. He woke up looking at her with a raw, honest expression that held zero corporate pretense. And you and I know that shared humanity was the true beginning. You know what titles can't buy? Sleep. She stayed awake. The hard drive Daniel Ross yanked from the legacy servers held 47 gigabytes of hidden corporate truth. Archived files some highly paid executive tried very hard to delete but totally failed. That cover-up attempt happened exactly 7.5 years ago during the weeks right after the accident, handled by a well-paid expert who truly grasped data architecture, yet totally missed one deeply hidden data backup. A smart failsafe buried in the original server setup. A quiet failsafe coded personally by the company's true founder back in the day. Daniel spent 6 grueling nights restoring the digital drive. He didn't just uncover one simple missing document. It was a web of files, patents, rich executive chatter, and secret board tapes. Financial ledgers, plus a vital email chain sent just weeks before the mysterious accident. They proved, using the sharp, careful logic of a man who always valued real truth over corporate status, exactly what was found. What Michael Harmon uncovered about Victor Lang's greedy schemes and his plan to stop him. That final message was sent merely 4 days before the tragic wreck happened. It went straight to Charlotte, and it started simply. "I have to tell you the truth I should have shared long ago." What followed were private words Daniel read once, then respectfully ignored, knowing a man's heart matters more than idle curiosity. He printed only the hard proof, hiding it safely across 3 physical spots. He cloned everything to 2 drives and a digital vault using a fake alias that had absolutely zero connection to the Nexxora empire. 11 days later, his private phone buzzed with an unknown number. Power always fights back when exposed. The text read, "We know what you found, stop." Daniel snapped a picture of the threat, saved it securely, and kept working. Let's watch the executives panic. That evening, Victor Lang summoned his elite security board. On paper, they claimed they were just reviewing corporate access protocols. The real goal, obvious to Daniel from the elite invite list, was to hunt down and crush whoever dared dig into their precious hidden legacy vault. But a title isn't intelligence. Daniel saw it coming, the files were gone. Yet Daniel completely underestimated how fast a desperate executive would actually strike next. Emily Hale vanished into thin air on Wednesday afternoon. Her well-paid nanny dropped her off at the after-school program, just like always. The activity center sat a mere 2 blocks from the giant Nexus Tower. She was signed in safely at 3:47 p.m. By 4:15, when the kids shifted from reading to playtime, the little girl was completely gone from the group. The staff wrongly assumed some rich parent took her home early. The nanny thought she was still playing inside. When Charlotte finally got the terrifying call, it was 5:38. Emily was missing for almost 2 hours. Michael heard the awful news at 5:42. He was pushing his cart upstairs when his phone buzzed. Ava calling directly from security. Her tone was dead flat, the exact way people sound when fighting pure, unvarnished terror. "Emily's gone," Ava whispered. Michael dropped everything and bolted. "See, this is where you and I learn a mop doesn't make a man." He moved through the streets with lethal precision. The combat instincts were just there, not actively recalled, not consciously remembered. A billionaire or a janitor, it didn't matter. The raw muscle memory lived deep inside his bones, just waiting to be truly needed. He scanned the security cameras with the smooth ease of the man who actually invented them. He judged escape paths with the sharp precision of a guy who used to master spaces, blind spots, and the deadly math of the chase. He never asked himself why he possessed these lethal skills. Since his memory vanished, he simply accepted the deep, quiet knowledge his body held onto. He just let his instincts work. Daniel Ross got him on the line less than 4 minutes after Ava reached out. This tells you and me that Daniel was watching closely, holding his breath for this exact second. "The truck that grabbed her traces back to a New Jersey shipping outfit," Daniel told him. "They list 3 different physical locations, but the only working spot is a waterfront warehouse over in Greenpoint. How fast can you arrive? I'm moving." Michael flew there, pushing every single limit. The place sat near a pier, 2 ugly floors of heavy gray industrial concrete. An old factory that once did honest work, now hiding dirty jobs for rich men buying silence. The wide loading dock out on the eastern edge sat behind a chain fence, locked tight with a heavy metal padlock. It was a new lock, a style Michael somehow knew, which cost him exactly 11 seconds to crack, using a tool he'd kept in his coat for 7 months without ever asking why. He slipped quietly inside the loading bay. He found Emily upstairs, locked inside what used to be a foreman's small, dusty office. Now it carried the cold, harsh feel of a room built just to hold innocent people. She sat curled up on a cheap metal folding chair, arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her face wore the brave, frozen terror of a little girl who knows tears are completely useless and has made the tough choice to hold them back. 2 heavy guards stood right outside in the dark hallway. Michael crept up the rear stairs. For the next 4 minutes he moved with a ruthless skill that wealth simply cannot buy. He couldn't explain it then, and didn't try later. Those hallway guards were huge, but they never expected a janitor on the back stairs. As you and I know, pure surprise is always far more valuable than plain physical size. He pulled the office door open. Emily locked eyes with him. Absolute shock and deep recognition washed over her little face instantly. Then she reacted just like she did in that corporate lobby 3 weeks ago, ignoring his simple uniform. She ran across the floor, clinging to him tightly, finally letting the heavy tears fall. She buried her wet face in his shoulder. With the broken voice of a terrified kid who was finally safe, she sobbed, "Daddy came for me. I knew you would come." Michael just held his daughter close in quiet relief. Then, speaking softly, he whispered, "I've got you, you're completely safe." He spoke with zero pretense, no CEO arrogance, just the raw, honest promise of a father protecting what actually matters. Daniel Ross rushed in 8 minutes later with 2 armed team members. They carried that smooth, icy calm that only former special ops guys bring to scenes that would make anyone else completely freeze up. "Let's pause here." He stared at Michael, holding his daughter tight, and just stayed dead silent. Finally, he muttered, "We need to plan our next move." "I know," Michael replied. "Victor set the big shareholder meeting for Friday." "I know. Charlotte doesn't know any of this yet." Michael looked at him. "She will," he said. No title could shield Charlotte from the chaos. 2 hours with police, 2 hours with lawyers. Then 30 minutes sitting alone in her massive office. A heavy stillness her assistant knew never to interrupt. When the phone rang at 11:15, Michael's voice wasn't the careful tone of a humble cleaner. He wasn't the invisible janitor sweeping her massive corporate hallways, acting as though he shouldn't disturb the air. It was a different voice, lower and perfectly steady. The tone of a man realizing his true worth, done hiding behind a uniform and keeping secrets. She stayed completely silent. "Emily is safe," he assured her. "She's with Daniel's team. I'm coming to you." "I'm coming to you," he repeated. "There are vital truths I need to share. I need you to listen fully before responding." Charlotte remained dead silent. "Can you do that?" "Yes," she whispered. Stripped of all pretenses, he shared everything possible in their limited time. He spoke the way he lived, directly, completely unvarnished, without elaboration. Treating her as an equal, never sugarcoating the harsh facts. He explained the horrific, mysterious crash. He described the blank slate of his mind and the agonizing journey to rebuild his lost soul. He mentioned the hard drive, the hidden documents, and that damning photo of Victor, laying in the garage, 38 minutes before a brake failure that was clearly deliberate sabotage. He laid out the fake patent filings, the secret messages, and the specific email addressed to her. But he refused to read that message over the phone. Real human connections require looking someone right in the eye. Charlotte just listened. He asked for her ear, and she gave him the absolute, unbroken focus she reserved for things of true human value. When his story ended, a heavy, breathless silence hung on the line for ages. Finally, in a shaky voice stripped of her usual executive armor, she said, "I have to ask." "Ask Emily, is she?" She choked up, trying again. "Is she yours?" Michael hesitated, facing his own fragile reality. "I don't know yet," he said. "My memory is still in pieces, but yes, I think she is. You and I both know a silence like that holds an entire lifetime of weight." "I have to be completely honest with you," Michael confessed. "I need you to understand what happens Friday at the big shareholder meeting. Victor's corrupt empire, everything he has built over these 8 years, crumbles on Friday. I need you ready to let the power go." "You're asking me to blindly trust you," she replied. "Yes." Another painful pause. "You vanished for 8 long years," she said. That raw crack in her tone wasn't an accusation. It was something far deeper and much more painful. The sound of a woman dropping a heavy emotional burden she had carried so long that letting go actually physically hurt. "I know the pain," he whispered. "And I will spend the rest of my life proving my real worth to you, even though I didn't choose this." A quiet breath. "But right now I need your strength for Friday." She sat in the silence for a long moment. "I will be ready." The Nexxora Dynamics shareholder meeting gathered up on the 41st floor. It kicked off at 9 a.m. on a freezing, brilliantly clear Friday in November. Let's watch this together, a morning making those cold towers of wealth look like pure, unforgiving light. The boardroom was stuffed with major investors flaunting their titles. Just empty titles, executives, and overpaid legal reps. Plus the usual crowd of corporate hangers-on, people there for politics rather than actual honest work. Victor Lang claimed the head of the table. He wore the smug look of a guy completely confident in his schemes, and honestly he had reason to be. He had the shareholder votes. He had the paperwork. He had the legal trap carefully built up over the last few months. All to frame Charlotte's firing as responsible corporate governance, hiding his greedy personal power grab. Like anyone who spends decades hiding behind a fancy job title, Victor was incredibly good at faking legitimacy. Charlotte sat quietly 3 chairs to his right. She showed the same calm she had in the lobby 3 weeks ago, no fake corporate mask, just true, quiet strength. Her hands rested on the table right in front of her perfectly prepared folder. Victor started the board meeting with the slick polish of a boss who loves hearing himself talk in these big rooms. He rattled off performance metrics. He quoted governance rules. He threw around the buzzword leadership continuity 4 times. For 8 years, that was the exact phrase he used to hint that any executive team he couldn't personally control was a massive threat to his own corporate power. He was 7 minutes into his scripted speech when the heavy boardroom doors swung open. Michael Carter walked in. He wasn't wearing his usual janitor uniform. He wore a borrowed suit from Daniel Ross, a guy who was just about the same size as him. It wasn't some pricey designer label, but it fit perfectly. Now you and I know true power isn't a price tag. Michael wore it like a man whose worth never came from expensive clothes. Right behind him was Daniel Ross, holding a simple laptop and a portable hard drive. Victor's carefully practiced rich guy face didn't flinch. "Mr. Carter," he barked, using the exact tone of an elite boss enforcing corporate class rules. "This is a closed session." "I know," Michael replied calmly. He strolled to the display screen, plugged in the laptop, and wiped Victor's fancy slides, replacing them with a single document. A standard patent filing dated 9 years ago. The true founder's name, Michael Harmon, flashed huge and undeniable on screen. 9 years ago, Michael stated clearly. This startup was built by one guy, one single patent, and one private investment of $800,000, which is fully proven in the original startup paperwork. He clicked to the next slide. The sole investor was Charlotte Hale. The founder was me. He clicked through the company records methodically. The original articles of incorporation. Board resolutions from those first 2 years, signed by both Michael Harmon and Charlotte Hale. Let's check the hidden emails from right before the accident. Secret internal memos, a recorded phone call where Victor Lang discussed. His smug voice was totally recognizable, echoing loud and clear through the expensive boardroom speakers. The shady financial trap he had secretly built without any board approval. Then came the security camera footage. Daniel had it digitally cleaned up by a forensic video expert just 3 days ago. The shadowy figure lurking in the corner was Victor Lang. The timestamp, the car, and his 43-minute window right before the crash were all dead giveaways. No lies left. You and I know money can't buy truth. The room went completely silent. Everything had just changed. Let's look at Victor still clinging to his hollow CEO chair. His expensive mask hadn't cracked. Michael saw it. Victor had spent years buying the title of the most powerful guy in the room, totally blind to the fact that his borrowed authority meant nothing here. "These documents are fabricated," Victor snapped. His voice stayed perfectly cold. "This is an attack on corporate leadership by a nobody with zero formal standing here." Michael just stared back. "The DNA results are also in the folder," he said quietly. "Emily Hale is my daughter, which makes me, under the terms of the original shareholder agreement that Charlotte and I signed 9 years ago, a material interested party in this proceeding." He took a breath. "That agreement is also in the folder." One major tech investor, a woman in her early 60s who valued truth over empty titles, had watched this room choke on hard evidence for 12 minutes and leaned right in. "I'd like to move that we suspend the current agenda pending an independent review of the materials presented." Someone seconded it in under 4 seconds. Victor glared across that expensive mahogany table. For the first time in 8 years, his fake corporate armor actually slipped. You and I know that look. A man finally realizing That in a room full of people his wealth depends on, his fancy executive title is completely worthless. He reached into his tailored jacket. For a split second, Michael assumed he was grabbing his phone. He definitely wasn't. The master lockdown sequence, Victor triggered from the hidden device in. His hand was built to guard Nexxora's assets during a hostile corporate takeover attempt. It forced a total building lockdown. All elevators died. Outside communication lines were instantly severed right at the network level. Plus a blind deletion protocol that would, in just 11 minutes, completely wipe the tech infrastructure holding Nexxora's entire operational platform together. 19,000 clients, 6 years of vital code. The lifeblood of an 800-person tech company. This was no rational business move. It was the desperate act of an owner believing that if he lost his shiny asset, he would just burn it all down. Boardroom lights suddenly flipped to a harsh emergency red. Michael was already sprinting before the lockdown warning even stopped echoing through the speakers. He knew this room, knew the deep tech infrastructure. The bones of these technical systems lived deep in his blood, far beneath any conscious memory or job title. And now he tore right through the emergency-lit halls with the absolute certainty of the real creator who built them. Charlotte flanked him right before he hit the stairwell. She stayed totally silent. She just matched his sprint, proving she valued the true man, not the suit. The master server room sat on the 6th basement level. In any cheaper corporate building, that floor becomes completely dead during a lockdown. But Michael had rigged a pure manual override buried far beneath that slick automated security layer. A quiet physical backup he had installed long before his memory loss. Because true power requires human hands, and he never trusted blind systems he couldn't physically touch. Charlotte possessed the live security codes to unlock the override. And Michael had the actual knowledge to crack the panel. Let's watch real human power work. Together, they found a strength that no corporate title could ever grant them. That deletion script had been burning through assets for 9 minutes when they hit the server floor. The 11-minute window was shutting fast. Michael approached the manual panel with the intense, fearless speed of a man who knew his true worth was completely detached from whatever he might lose, while Charlotte rattled off those override codes purely from memory. The massive erasure stopped dead, with exactly 93 seconds left on the clock. Victor Lang was standing right there. The CEO had sneaked down a different route. Now, blocking the panel, he wore the desperate expression of an executive realizing his massive wealth and lofty titles could not buy his way out of this dead end. He held a gadget Michael instantly recognized as a portable EMP. Highly illegal but brutally effective. It could instantly wipe the priceless server infrastructure from about 15 feet away. Michael just stared at him, perfectly still. "You built this company on what I built," Michael stated calmly. His tone was exactly the same, whether he was sweeping the lobby or commanding a boardroom. It was the steady, unhurried voice he had used everywhere for 7 months. The sound of a man whose real identity required absolutely no corporate performance. You spent 8 years telling everyone in that room that you were protecting it. The cornered executive clenched his jaw. "This ends with me or it doesn't end." "It ends," Michael said, "either way." He calmly glanced upward. "Arya," he commanded. "Let's pause here." Arya was the artificial intelligence Michael built early on, proving a person's true legacy in their craft, not their bank account. He named it after the Latin word for song because Michael had sincerely believed, right when he built it, that true protection needed a soul, a voice that understood it was guarding human effort, not just corporate property. Long before his accident, he had hardwired a deep recognition protocol for his own voice. A quiet failsafe he never used or bragged about, keeping it secret because he already understood that chasing corporate status could easily corrupt good people. Even back then, he questioned if those powerful executives would remain people he could truly trust. That hidden code survived 8 years untouched simply because the wealthy new CEO never realized it existed. "System lockdown," Michael stated smoothly. "Server room 2, grid 7. Authorization Harmon 117, the doors sealed." Heavy locks engaged across the entire room, trapping Victor Lang exactly where he stood. The overhead lights shifted back to normal. Suddenly, the wealthy executive was just a trapped man holding useless tech, staring at exits the building's automated systems. Would only open with a true founder's voice print, totally ignoring his hollow title. The FBI squad called during the massive shareholder meeting finally hit that 6th underground floor exactly 14 minutes later. They found the mighty Victor Lang slumped against the glowing servers, looking completely powerless, staring blindly at nothing. Outside in the quiet hall, they found the real leaders standing together. Neither of them said a word. They stood incredibly close, their tired shoulders nearly brushing against each other, sharing that silent, exhausted bond of two human beings who just protected something priceless and had not even processed the trauma yet. The following months were anything but simple. Nothing truly genuine ever is in the messy legal, corporate, and personal consequences of 8 years of fraud and 1 night of raw truth proved to you and me that real accountability never resolves cleanly. There were endless depositions, exhausting independent audits, massive board shakeups, and harsh regulatory reviews, and countless press stories of highly questionable accuracy. You and I know some talks just take time, because the deep human truths they carried would shatter if rushed. Officially, the state named him Michael Harmon, billionaire creator of Nexxora. It took cold DNA proof, corporate archives, and sworn statements from Charlotte Hale and Daniel Ross to confirm it. Reclaiming his empty legal identity took 4 entire months. Weighing his true value as a man took much, much longer. Victor Lang got slammed with massive wire and corporate fraud, plus assault conspiracy and 3 heavy charges for taking a young girl. His expensive lawyers fought hard, but his money couldn't save him. Charlotte tried breaking the truth to Emily in a highly rehearsed talk that quickly fell apart. It sounded absolutely nothing like the corporate script she had written. Kids don't process heavy truths on our rigid adult schedules. And Emily was a girl who always cut right through the fake noise to find out what really mattered. She just sat at that kitchen table, listening and asking real questions. They were not the PR questions Charlotte expected, but she answered every single one with raw honesty. Finally, Emily said, "So he was around the whole time, he just did not know I was his child." "That is exactly right," Charlotte replied. Emily sat and thought, "Does he know now? He sure does." "Okay," Emily whispered, getting up to find Ava. Sisterhood mattered way more than a sudden billionaire dad. Michael sat with Ava the night he officially got his title back. Ava had gently gathered the big facts slowly over a few weeks. Because Michael always handled massive, life-altering news with a gentle, deeply human and careful touch. Respecting her feelings, openly admitting the messy parts that still lacked any clear or simple answers. She listened to it all with profound, quiet grace. A rich inner calm she learned from simply being a devoted father's daughter. That night, she looked right across the table and said, "You are still just my dad." "Yes," Michael answered, "even with all this money, especially with all this noise." She accepted his words with a nod, filing away the money stuff, and returned to reading. Michael watched her turn the pages for a long while, watching with the pure focus of a father who finally realizes that true wealth is not financial at all. Let's be honest, the family right in front of him meant absolutely everything. The corporate board tried handing Michael the shiny CEO crown with the kind of desperate, eager relief you see from rich investors who just watched their biggest financial panic disappear completely. The empty offer arrived in stiff corporate words in a heavy letter delivered right to his door by a messenger totally overdressed for a 6-flight climb up the stairs of a regular Brooklyn apartment building. Michael read the fancy paper, then he tossed it onto the kitchen table. He stared at the worthless title for a while. When Charlotte phoned him that night, he gave her his final choice. "I am passing on it," he told her. Silence. "Look, I built that giant empire at 29, he said. "I am 43 with 2 daughters. I missed 3 full years with one, and the entire first 7 with the other." He fell silent. "The business will survive just fine with someone else in the big chair. My girls are only young once. The board will never ever accept that. They'll accept what the owner decides," he said. "We know titles mean nothing." "Which means they will accept it." Silence. "You are the controlling shareholder. So are you," he replied. "Together." A deep silence followed, the kind of quiet where you realize money and titles are suddenly irrelevant. "What are you suggesting?" Charlotte asked. I am suggesting, Michael said, that you lead this company well. You have run things for 8 years. You should keep that role, with a board that actually supports your leadership. He paused, and with total access to every secret Victor hid, Charlotte stayed perfectly still. That is not what I expected you to say. No, Michael agreed gently. What do you want in return? He glanced across the room at the crayon sketch Ava taped to the fridge that very morning. 4 messy, uneven stick figures, a masterpiece showing real wealth, unmistakable pure joy on every face. I want Sundays, he smiled, and I want to be the one reading chapter 7 aloud. Charlotte showed up for dinner the next Sunday. She returned for every single Sunday after that. It started as business talk, but you and I know how life works. It quietly became the heartbeat of their entire week. The new apartment was modest. Michael chose a small spot in Park Slope. It had an extra bedroom just for Emily's visits, which she did on weekends, visiting with a frequency that had stopped needing any formal plans, naturally shifting into an unspoken given. The humble kitchen was the true heart of this home. Because real homes are filled with warmth and life, unlike empty mansions bought just to show off. It was marked by shared meals, scattered homework, long chats, and that specific creative mess of 2 little girls turning every available surface into an art gallery for their crayon sketches. Scattered card games and library books resting open on favorite pages. Michael cooked every single Sunday. He mastered cooking during those quiet years of his amnesia recovery, when chopping vegetables was a basic skill he rebuilt alongside his entire shattered memory. And he realized he had a real talent for it, though not for showing off to an audience, but because feeding the people you love is the most honest, valuable way to say you care about them. Ava and Emily danced around that kitchen like kids who truly own the space they occupy, with the absolute comfort of souls who do not yet worry about titles, status, or whether they truly belong. On one of those easy Sundays early in the spring of the next year, the sunlight pouring through the glass was the soft, pale gold of a crisp morning, trying its best to turn warm, though not quite getting there. Michael stood at the stove. Charlotte sat sipping coffee, putting down her corporate tablet when she realized she was staring blindly at the same dull paragraph for the 3rd time. Ava was busy showing Emily a card trick that kept failing despite her best efforts. Both girls wore those intensely serious expressions of people fixing a deeply important problem. Charlotte studied the kids for a moment, then shifted her gaze to Michael cooking. He did not notice her staring. He was simply doing what he always did when fully lost in the moment, moving gracefully like a man who finally understands his worth is not tied to a bank account, holding nothing back. You see, true peace means never wishing for that lost billionaire life, just cherishing exactly what is here. Charlotte had thought. After the endless depositions, the server room drama, and the cold legal process of unraveling every empty corporate asset Victor had built, you and I might assume she just felt the crushing weight of all those lost wealthy years. 8 years, their daughter's earliest milestones. The woman she used to be before that terrible accident. Before carrying a heavy, nameless grief she could never quite figure out how to process. Because the man she missed was never officially declared dead, denying her the finality she desperately needed to let go of his memory. But she was wrong about those feelings, or more accurately, she was half right, but entirely missed the real treasure standing right in front of her. The truth she felt looking at Michael Carter today. At a man whose soul never shrank when he traded his CEO suite for a janitor's mop, who bravely stepped right into a ballroom to stand beside a stranger, who sprinted across midnight streets just to bring a scared child safely back home, who sat in a dim basement, staring at a photo with quiet dignity, while his forgotten life of status and power violently rearranged itself around him. But as we know, true worth has nothing to do with lost fortunes. It was about the pure value of right now. Emily paused her card trick. She studied Michael, then Charlotte, using that sharp, perceptive gaze she inherited from 2 incredibly strong, grounded parents. Her tiny face settled into a pure, uncomplicated satisfaction that no amount of money could ever buy. That deep comfort children find when the world confirms the love they already know is real. Does this mean, Emily said aloud into the warm Sunday morning kitchen, surrounded by the rich smell of coffee, cooking, 2 children, and the truly priceless noise of a home, finally filled with love. That we are finally a real family? The heavy, innocent question just hung softly in the air. Michael turned away from the stove, looking gently at Emily. He glanced at Ava, who stared right back with the steady calm of a tiny philosopher. He looked right at Charlotte, and she held his gaze perfectly. He took in his true wealth, his family, the kitchen, the simple crayon drawings on the refrigerator, the open books on the table, and the messy little card game that wasn't going exactly as planned, the cooling coffee, the golden morning light spilling through the window, and absolutely all of it. This ordinary, utterly priceless, and entirely irreplaceable human world. Then, for the first time in so many hard years, Michael Harmon smiled with absolutely everything he had, and nodded.